The alarm bells rang through the Coalition defense station like thunder. Red lights flashed across every wall and ceiling. Admiral Tae Min stood in the command center, watching the main screen with growing fear. Hundreds of enemy ships surrounded their station. The Vorthak Empire had come to destroy them. Tae Min was one of the Cathara people. His body was tall and thin, almost see-through like glass. His kind were peaceful beings who used their minds more than their bodies. They had built this station to protect the trade routes between star systems. Now the savage Vorthak wanted to take it from them. The Vorthak were different from the Cathara. They were big, strong, and loved to fight. Their skin was thick and gray like stone. They had sharp teeth and claws. Most scary of all, they collected other beings as trophies. They would capture the Cathara and keep them in cages just to show off their power. "Sir, we are losing shield power," said one of the officers. The young Cathara's voice shook with fear. "The enemy ships keep hitting us with their weapons. We cannot hold much longer." Tae Min looked at the battle display. His people were good at many things, but fighting was not one of them. They had some weapons on the station, but not enough to stop so many Vorthak ships. He needed help, and he needed it now. "Send a message to all Coalition forces," Tae Min ordered. "Tell them we need reinforcements right away. Any ships that can reach us in time." The communications officer worked fast on his console. His thin fingers moved over the controls like water. After a few moments, he looked up with sad eyes. "Sir, the main fleet is too far away. They are fighting the Vorthak on the other side of the galaxy. The only force close enough to help us is the human outpost on Cygnus 7. Tae Min felt his heart sink. The humans were new to the galaxy. They had only joined the Coalition a few years ago. Their planet, Earth, was far from the main trade routes. Most Coalition members thought humans were primitive. They used simple weapons and basic technology. What could they do against the mighty Vorthak Empire? But Tae Min had no choice. "Send the message to the human outpost. Tell them our situation." Far away on Cygnus 7th, Commander Hyun-woo was checking reports in his office. The human outpost was small and quiet. Only 200 humans lived there. They were supposed to watch the area and help any ships that needed fuel or repairs. It was not an exciting job, but someone had to do it. Hyun-woo was a man in his 40s, with dark hair and serious eyes. He had been a soldier for most of his life. When Earth joined the Galaxy Coalition, he volunteered to come to this distant place. He missed his home sometimes, but he believed in helping others. Captain So Young ran into his office without knocking. She was younger than Hyun-woo, with short black hair and quick movements. She was his second in command and one of the best tactical officers he had ever known. "Sir, we just got an emergency message from the Coalition," she said, breathing hard. "There's a station under attack. They need reinforcements." Hyun-woo took the message tablet and read it quickly. His face grew serious. The Cathara were peaceful people. They did not deserve to be hunted by the Vorthak like animals. "How far is the station?" he asked. 3 days if we push our engines." "Hard," So Young replied. "But sir, we only have one ship and 200 people. The message says there are thousands of Vorthak attacking the station. What can we do against so many?" Hyun-woo stood up and walked to the window. He could see the human ship Indomitable sitting on the landing pad. It was not the biggest or fastest ship in the galaxy. Other species often laughed at human technology. They said it was too simple and rough. But Hyun-woo knew something that the other species did not understand. Humans were different. They came from a world that tried to kill them every day. Earth had storms that could destroy cities, animals that could eat a person in one bite, and diseases that could kill millions. To survive on Earth, humans had to be tough, smart, and never give up. The galaxy thought humans were weak because they did not have fancy technology or special powers like other species. They were wrong. Humans had something more valuable. They had the will to fight when everything seemed hopeless. "Get everyone ready," Hyun-woo told So Young. "We leave in 1 hour." "Sir, are you sure? We don't know much about the Vorthak. The reports say they are much stronger than humans." Hyun-woo smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator who had found prey. "So Young, do you remember what we learned in school about Earth's history?" "Of course, sir." "Do you remember the story about the humans who fought giant bears with nothing but wooden spears? Or the ones who crossed frozen oceans in tiny boats? Or the soldiers who held mountain passes against armies 10 times their size?" So Young nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand. "The galaxy thinks we are weak because we don't have crystal, weapons, or energy shields," Hyun-woo continued. "They don't understand that we are weapons. Every human alive today is here because their ancestors survived things that would kill most galactic species in minutes. Within an hour, the Indomitable was flying through space toward the Coalition station." In the ship's meeting room, Hyun-woo talked to his officers and soldiers. They were all young men and women from Earth. They had volunteered to serve far from home. "Listen carefully," Hyun-woo said. "We are going to help people who cannot help themselves. The enemy thinks they are strong because they have big muscles and sharp teeth. They have never met humans before. They don't know what we can do." Lieutenant Ji-ho raised his hand. He was a short man with wide shoulders and scars on his hands from training accidents. "Sir, what if there are too many of them for us to fight?" "Then we fight anyway," Hyun-woo replied. "That's what humans do. We don't run from fights just because the odds are bad. We make the odds better by being tougher than the enemy expects." The soldiers smiled and nodded. They understood. They came from a world where everything was dangerous. Cold that could freeze blood, heat that could cook flesh, storms that could throw cars through the air like toys. Compared to Earth, fighting some aliens would be easy. As the ship flew through space, Admiral Tae-min waited at the station. The Vorthak attacks were getting stronger. His people were scared and tired. He hoped the humans would arrive soon. Even though he did not think they could do much to help, he had no idea what was coming his way. 3 days later, the human ship Indomitable arrived at the Coalition station. Admiral Tae-min watched from the command center as the vessel approached. His heart sank when he saw it. The ship looked old and simple compared to other Coalition vessels. It was made of basic metal with few weapons showing on the outside. "That's our reinforcement?" asked one of his officers. The young Cathara's voice was full of doubt. "It looks like a cargo ship." Tae-min had to agree. He had hoped for battle cruisers with advanced weapons and energy shields. Instead, he got one small human ship. He wondered if the humans even understood how dangerous the Vorthak were. The Indomitable docked with the station. Admiral Tae-min went to meet the human commander. He expected to see someone wearing fancy armor or carrying powerful weapons. Instead, he found a man in a simple uniform walking calmly through the airlock. Commander Hyun-woo stepped onto the station and looked around. He was not impressed by what he saw. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that looked pretty, but seemed weak. The air smelled clean, almost too clean. Everything was designed for beings who never had to worry about danger. "Admiral Tae-min?" Hyun-woo asked. walking up to the tall, thin alien. "I'm Commander Hyunwoo from Earth. We came as fast as we could." Taemin looked at the human with confusion. Hyunwoo was shorter than most Kithara, but his body looked solid and strong. His eyes were calm but alert, like an animal watching for threats. There was something about him that made Taemin feel nervous, though he could not say why. "Thank you for coming," Taemin said politely. "How many ships did you bring?" "Just this one," Hyunwoo replied. "But we have 200 good people ready to fight." Taemin's heart sank further. 200 beings against thousands of Vorthak? It was impossible. But he did not want to hurt the humans' feelings. Maybe they could help in some small way. "Let me show you to the briefing room," Taemin said. "I will explain the situation." As they walked through the station, more humans came through the airlock. Taemin watched them with growing worry. They looked so small and weak compared to the Vorthak. Their skin was soft, not covered with thick scales or hard shells like proper warriors. They carried simple weapons that shot metal bullets instead of energy beams. Lieutenant Ji-ho was one of the first humans to enter the station proper. He took off his helmet and breathed the station's air. It was clean and perfect, with just the right amount of oxygen and no dangerous chemicals at all. To Ji-ho, it felt strange. On Earth, air usually carried dust, pollen, smoke, or the smell of rain. This air was too pure. A Kithara medic came running up to Ji-ho with a breathing mask. "Sir, you must put this on. The Vorthak have been using bioweapons. The air in this section is toxic to most life forms." Ji-ho looked at the alien with confusion. "Toxic? The air tastes fine to me." He took a deep breath to prove his point. "Actually, it's cleaner than most air on Earth." The medic stared at Ji-ho in shock. The bioweapon that had been making Kithara sick for hours was not affecting the human at all. In fact, Ji-ho seemed to be enjoying the fresh air. In the briefing room, Admiral Taemin showed the humans a holographic display of the enemy forces. Hundreds of Vorthak ships surrounded the station. Each ship was bigger and more powerful than the human vessel. "The Vorthak Empire wants to capture our station," Taemin explained. "They use it to control the trade routes, but more than that, they want to capture my people as trophies. They keep other species in cages to show their power." Captain So Young studied the display carefully. She had been in many battles before, but never in space. On Earth, she had fought in mountain wars and desert conflicts. This would be different, but the basic ideas were the same. "What are their weapons like?" So Young asked. "They use plasma cannons that can melt through most armor," Taemin replied. "Their bioweapons can kill most species in minutes. And their soldiers are very strong. A single Vorthak warrior can fight 10 of our people." Captain Dong-hyun, the human strategic planner, raised his hand. He was a quiet man who thought carefully before speaking. "Admiral, have you tried boarding their ships?" Taemin looked shocked. "Boarding their ships? That would be suicide. They have weapons and traps designed to kill anyone who tries to enter. Plus, their ships are built for their biology. The temperature is too hot for most species, the air is toxic, and the gravity is crushing." Dong-hyun nodded as if this was normal. "How hot?" "Over 60 degrees Celsius, Taemin said. "And the toxic gases would kill any of my people in seconds." The humans looked at each other and shrugged. 60 degrees was hot, but not deadly. On Earth, some deserts got that hot during summer days. As for toxic gases, humans had been breathing polluted air in cities for hundreds of years. "What about direct assault?" asked Lieutenant Jiho. "Hit them fast and hard before they can react?" Admiral Taemin felt dizzy. These humans were talking about tactics that would get everyone killed. No civilized species fought like that anymore. Wars were fought with technology and strategy, not by throwing soldiers at the enemy. "You don't understand," Taemin said carefully. "The Vorthak are much stronger than humans. They have thick skin that can stop energy weapons. Their claws can cut through metal. They heal from wounds that would kill other beings." Hyunwoo listened to all of this with interest. The Vorthak sounded tough, but not tougher than some things on Earth. Humans had fought bears, tigers, and sharks with nothing but their wits and simple weapons. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and natural disasters that destroyed entire civilizations. "Admiral," Hyunwoo said slowly, "I think you are right that the Vorthak are stronger than humans. But you might be surprised by what humans can do when they have to fight." Just then, alarms started ringing again. The Vorthak were beginning another attack. Through the window, they could see enemy ships moving closer to the station. "They're coming," Taemin said, his voice full of fear. "Everyone should get to the safe areas." But the humans did not move towards safety. Instead, they checked their weapons and prepared for battle. Jiho put his helmet back on and sealed his armor. So Young loaded fresh ammunition into her rifle. Dong Hyun studied the station's layout on his tablet. "Where do you want us?" Hyunwoo asked. Taemin stared at them in confusion. "You're going to fight? But you just heard how dangerous they are." Hyunwoo smiled, and for a moment, Taemin saw something in the human's eyes that made his blood run cold. It was the look of a predator that was not afraid of anything. "Admiral," Hyunwoo said quietly, "we didn't come here to hide. We came here to fight. Just tell us where the enemy is." As the first Vorthak assault ships approached the station, Admiral Taemin began to realize that maybe he had been wrong about humans. There was something different about them, something that made them willing to fight when any sane being would run. He just did not know yet how different they really were. The Vorthak attack came like a storm. Their assault ships cut through the station's outer defenses and landed in the docking bays. The sound of metal tearing and explosions echoed through the corridors. Admiral Taemin watched the security cameras in horror as massive gray-skinned warriors poured out of the ships. Each Vorthak soldier stood almost 3 meters tall. Their skin was thick and bumpy like armor. Sharp teeth filled their mouths, and their claws could tear through metal doors. They carried weapons that shot burning plasma and wore armor that could stop most coalition weapons. "They're in sections C and D," reported a Cathara officer. His voice shook with terror. "Our people are falling back. The weapons barely scratch their armor." War Chief Brutus led the attack personally. He was the largest Vorthak on the ship, with scars covering his arms and face from 100 battles. He had conquered 12 worlds for the Empire. His trophy room was filled with the preserved remains of enemies who had thought they were strong. "Find the crystal beings," Brutus roared to his warriors. "Take them alive when possible. They will make fine additions to my collection." The Vorthak moved through the station like a plague. Their weapons melted through doors and walls. Their claws left deep marks in the metal floors. The few coalition security forces who tried to stop them were quickly overwhelmed. But then they met the humans. Sergeant Hanul was waiting in Corridor 7C when the first Vorthak warriors arrived. She was a short woman with strong arms and calm eyes. In her hands was a simple projectile rifle that fired metal bullets. Compared to the Vorthak's plasma weapons, it looked like a toy. The first Vorthak warrior to see her laughed. This small, soft-looking creature thought she could fight him. He raised his plasma cannon and fired a blast that would have turned most beings into ash. The blast hit Ha-Nul in the chest and threw her backward. Her armor melted and her uniform caught fire. She should have been dead. Instead, she rolled to her feet, patted out the flames, and looked down at the burned hole in her chest armor. "That hurt," she said calmly. Then she raised her rifle and put 3 bullets through the Vorthak's skull. The other Vorthak warriors stared in shock. Their plasma weapons were designed to kill any known life form instantly. This small human had taken a direct hit and was still fighting. It was impossible. Ha-Nul did not give them time to think about it. She moved down the corridor, shooting with deadly accuracy. Her bullets could not penetrate Vorthak armor easily, so she aimed for joints and weak spots. When she ran out of ammunition, she pulled out a combat knife and kept fighting. In Corridor 9A, Private Wu Jin was having his own first meeting with the Vorthak. He was a young man, barely 20 years old, with quick reflexes and good instincts. He had grown up in the mountains of Korea, where he learned to hunt and fight with simple weapons. 3 Vorthak warriors found him checking on wounded Cathara, civilians. They expected an easy kill. Instead, they found something that confused and frightened them. Wu Jin moved like water. When they fired their plasma weapons, he was no longer where they aimed. He rolled, jumped, and slid between their shots with impossible speed. The Vorthak were strong and tough, but they were not fast. They had never fought anything that could move like a human. Wu Jin reached the first warrior and drove his combat knife up through a gap in the alien's armor. The Vorthak roared in pain and swung his massive claws, but Wu Jin was already gone, moving to attack the second warrior. The fight was over in less than a minute. 3 dead Vorthak lay on the floor, and Wu Jin was checking his equipment for damage. He had a few scratches, but nothing serious. War Chief Brutus heard the reports with growing anger and confusion. His warriors were the best fighters in the galaxy. They had conquered species much larger and stronger than these small humans. How were they losing? These humans must have some kind of technology, he growled to his lieutenant. Hidden weapons, or armor. Find out what they are using. But when the Vorthak medics examined human equipment, they found nothing special. The humans used simple metal weapons and basic armor. Their technology was primitive compared to most galactic species. Yet somehow they were winning fights that should have been impossible. Admiral Taemin watched the battle through security cameras and could not believe what he was seeing. The humans were not just fighting the Vorthak. They were winning, but how they were winning made no sense. He watched Sergeant Ha-Nul take another plasma blast to the shoulder. The weapon burned through her armor and into her flesh. Any Cathara would have died from the pain alone. Ha-Nul just switched her rifle to her other hand and kept shooting. He watched Private Wu Jin jump from a balcony onto a Vorthak's back, stabbing down with his knife. The fall should have broken his legs. Instead, he landed like a cat and rolled away from the alien's claws. "Get me a medical scan of the humans," Taemin ordered his science officer. "I want to know how they are, surviving injuries that would kill us." The science officer worked quickly, using the station's sensors to scan human physiology during the battle. When the results came back, he stared at his screen in shock. "Admiral," he said slowly, "the human bone density is 3 times the galactic standard. Their muscle fibers are unlike anything in our database. And their blood, Admiral, human blood would be toxic to most of our allies." Taemin felt a chill run through his crystal body. "What do you mean, toxic?" Their blood carries chemicals that would poison a Kithara in minutes, iron levels that would kill most species, and their immune systems, Admiral, they are carrying diseases that their bodies treat as normal, but that would be deadly plagues. To us. Admiral Veltar, the station's second-in-command, joined them at the command center. He was an older Kithara with decades of military experience. He had seen many species fight, but never anything like this. Admiral Tae-min, Veltar said quietly, I think we made a mistake when we classified the humans. What do you mean? Veltar pointed at the screens showing the battle. We thought they were a primitive species because their technology is simple. But look at them. They don't need advanced technology because they are the technology. Their bodies are living weapons. The screens, more humans were joining the fight. Each one moved with the same impossible speed and endurance. They took injuries that would kill most beings and kept fighting. They used simple weapons with deadly skill. War Chief Brutus was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. These humans were not weak prey. They were predators, and he had walked into their territory. For the first time in his long career of conquest, Brutus felt something he had never experienced before. He felt afraid. The humans were not just fighting back. They were hunting his warriors through the corridors of the station, and they were very good at it. Better than anything he had ever faced. As more of his warriors fell to human weapons, Brutus began to realize that maybe the Vorthak Empire had finally met something they could not conquer, something that was even more dangerous than they were, something that came from a world so terrible that it had created beings who treated war like a game and death like an inconvenience. In the Coalition Science Lab, Dr. Kyung-mi was treating wounded soldiers and trying to understand what made humans so different. She was a calm woman in her 30s who had studied medicine on Earth before volunteering for deep space service. To her, the questions the Coalition scientists kept asking seemed strange. Doctor, said the Kethera medical officer, how do your people survive injuries like this? He pointed to Sergeant Hanul, who was sitting calmly while Dr. Kyung-mi cleaned plasma burns on her shoulder. It's not that bad, Hanul said with a shrug. I had worse burns when I fell into a campfire as a kid. The Kethera medic stared at her. The plasma burn had gone through armor and into muscle. It should have been agony. Yet Hanul was talking as if it was a minor scratch. Dr. Kyung-mi looked up from her work. Pain tolerance varies between species, she said simply. Humans are used to dealing with injury and discomfort. Our world taught us to keep going even when we're hurt. Your world? Asked Admiral Veltar, who had come to see the medical bay. Tell me about Earth. What is it like? Dr. Kyung-mi thought for a moment while she bandaged Hanul's shoulder. Earth is beautiful, she said, but it can be dangerous. We have storms that can destroy entire cities. Earthquakes that split the ground open. Volcanoes that bury everything in ash. The Coalition officers listened with growing alarm. And the weather, Dr. Kyung-mi continued, can change very quickly. In Korea, where I grew up, winter temperatures could drop to minus 40 degrees Celsius. Sometimes we had blizzards that lasted for days, and in summer, it could get so hot and humid that just walking outside was like swimming through soup. Admiral Veltar felt his crystal body grow cold. Minus 40 degrees would kill a Kethera in minutes. How do you survive such temperatures? Clothing helps, Dr. Kyung-mi said, and humans are good at adapting. Our ancestors lived through ice, ages and heat waves that would have killed most species. I guess we inherited that toughness. In the command center, the Coalition scientists were running more detailed scans of human physiology. Each new discovery was more shocking than the last. "Admiral," the science officer reported, "human muscle density is not just higher than ours. It's higher than any species in our database. Their bones are so strong they could be used as building material. And their reflexes. They can react to threats faster than our computers can track." Admiral Tae-min studied the data with growing concern. "What about their weapons? Why do they use such primitive technology?" "Sir, I think their weapons are not primitive. They're practical. Human projectile weapons work in any environment. No power cells to run out, no complex electronics to break. And since humans are so strong, they can use weapons that would be too heavy for other species." On the battlefield, the truth of this was becoming clear. The Vorthak's advanced plasma weapons sometimes overheated or ran out of energy. The humans' simple bullet-firing guns just kept working. And in the hands of beings with perfect aim and steady nerves, those simple weapons were deadly. Commander Min-ho was proving this point in the station's flooded lower levels. The Vorthak had used chemical weapons to fill several corridors with acid that could dissolve metal. They thought this would stop any rescue attempts. They had not counted on humans. Min-ho swam through the acid-filled corridors wearing only basic protective gear. The acid was strong enough to eat through Vorthak armor, but human skin was naturally resistant to many chemicals. What would have been deadly to other species was just uncomfortable to Min-ho. He found a group of Cathara civilians trapped in an air pocket, scared and running out of oxygen. The acid had melted the doors, trapping them inside. "Don't worry," Min-ho told them calmly. "I'll get you out." The Cathara stared at him in shock. His protective suit was smoking from acid damage, but he seemed completely unworried. To Min-ho, this was just another rescue mission. He had trained in worse conditions on Earth. "But the acid," one of the Cathara whispered. "How are you not dying?" Min-ho shrugged as he attached a breathing apparatus to the first civilian. "Humans are hard to kill. Our planet made sure of that." Back in the science lab, Dr. Kyung-mi was answering more questions about Earth. The Coalition scientists could not believe what they were hearing. "You said you had predators on your world," Admiral Veltar said. "What kind of predators?" "Oh, all kinds," Dr. Kyung-mi replied cheerfully. "Bears that could weigh half a ton and run faster than most vehicles. Big cats with teeth like knives. Sharks in the oceans that could bite a person in half, poisonous snakes and spiders, crocodiles that could stay underwater for hours waiting to attack." The alien scientists looked sick. Such a world sounded like a nightmare. "How did humans become the dominant species?" asked the Cathara medical officer. Dr. Kyung-mi paused her work to think. "Humans are good at working together," she said. "And we never give up. Even when everything seems hopeless, we keep trying to find a way to survive. I guess you could say we're stubborn." Private Wu Jin, who was getting a cut on his arm cleaned, laughed. "My grandmother used to say that humans are too stupid to know when they're beaten. She meant it as a compliment." Admiral Tae-min had been listening to the conversation through the intercom. Now he understood why the humans seemed so fearless. They came from a world that was actively trying to kill them every day. War was just another Tuesday for them. He opened a communication channel to Earth Command. If humans were this dangerous as civilians, what were their actual military forces like? The response he got made his crystal blood freeze. "Admiral Tae-min," came the voice of Earth Command. "We understand you have some of our people helping with a security situation. Please note that the personnel you have are from our Civilian Protection Service. They are not military forces. Taemin stared at the communication panel. Not military? Correct. Commander Hyun Woo and his team are trained for peacekeeping and disaster relief. They are specifically chosen for their calm temperaments and non-aggressive nature. They represent our gentler approach to interstellar relations. The communication ended, leaving Taemin staring at the screen in horror. The humans who were systematically destroying the Vorthak invasion force were the calm, gentle ones. He looked around the command center at his officers. They had all heard the transmission. The fear in their crystal eyes was clear. "Admiral," whispered Veltar, "if these are their peaceful civilians, what are their soldiers like?" Taemin did not want to think about that. He was beginning to understand that the Galaxy Coalition had made a terrible mistake when they first met humans. They had classified Earth as a frontier world with primitive inhabitants. The truth was much more frightening. Earth was not a frontier world. It was a death world that had produced beings who thought mortal combat was normal exercise. And now those beings were on his side. He should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt terrified. Because if humans could do this to the Vorthak, what could they do to anyone who made them angry? For the first time since the attack began, Admiral Taemin was not worried about the Vorthak. He was worried about what his rescuers might do next. War Chief Brutus paced in his command ship like a caged animal. Reports kept coming in from his warriors, and each one made less sense than the last. His best soldiers were being defeated by beings that looked weak and used primitive weapons. Capture. "One of them alive," he growled to his lieutenant. "I must understand what these humans are." Lieutenant Eunji was leading a scouting mission in the outer sections of the station when the Vorthak found her. She was a small woman with quick eyes and careful movements. Her job was to gather information about enemy positions and report back to Commander Hyun-woo. She had just finished placing surveillance devices when 6 Vorthak warriors surrounded her. They moved carefully, having learned that humans were more dangerous than they looked. "Surrender, small one," said the largest warrior. "Our war chief wishes to study your species." Yoonji looked at the massive aliens surrounding her. Each one was 3 times her size with weapons that could melt through steel. She was alone and outnumbered. Any reasonable person would have surrendered. Instead, she smiled. "You can try to take me," she said calmly, "but you might not like what happens next." The Vorthak warriors looked at each other in confusion. This tiny human was threatening them. It was like an insect threatening a giant. They stunned her with a low-power plasma blast and carried her unconscious body to their ship. Brutus was waiting in his trophy room, surrounded by the preserved remains of enemies he had defeated. When Yoonji woke up, she was chained to a metal chair with restraints designed to hold creatures much stronger than humans. The Vorthak had learned to be careful. "Welcome, human," Brutus said, studying her with interest. "You are the first of your kind I have seen up close, so small, so fragile. Yet my warriors speak of you with fear. Explain this." Yoonji tested her restraints without seeming to move. The chains were strong, but they were designed for Vorthak physiology. Human wrists and shoulders were built differently. "There's nothing to explain," she said. "We're just people. You attacked us, so we defended ourselves." Brutus laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Defended? You are destroying my forces. Warriors who have conquered worlds are falling to your simple weapons. What technology do you use?" "No special technology," Yoonji replied. "Just determination." For the next hour, Brutus tried to break her. He used pain devices that had made the strongest aliens beg for mercy. He showed her the preserved remains of other species he had conquered. He threatened to kill her slowly and painfully. Yunji endured it all with the same calm expression. She had been trained to resist torture. But more than that, she had grown up on Earth. She had dealt with pain, fear, and hardship since childhood. What the Vorthak thought was unbearable was just uncomfortable to her. "Impossible," Brutus muttered. "Every species breaks eventually. What are you?" While he was distracted by his frustration, Yunji finished working on her restraints. Human joints could dislocate and relocate in ways that would cripple other species. She had been slowly working her hands free during the entire interrogation. When the moment was right, she struck. The metal chair became a weapon as she swung it at the nearest guard. The impact sent the massive Vorthak flying across the room. Brutus spun around in shock, but Yunji was already moving. She used the chain from her restraints like a whip, wrapping it around another guard's throat. When he tried to grab her, she climbed up his arm and drove her elbow into his eye socket. The third guard tried to shoot her with his plasma weapon, but Yunji was already behind him, using his own claw to cut his throat. In less than 30 seconds, 3 elite Vorthak warriors were dead, and Yunji was standing in the middle of the trophy room with pieces of their equipment in her hands. Brutus stared at her in absolute shock. "How did you... Those were my best warriors." "I told you," Yunji said, checking the plasma weapon she had taken. "We're just people, but we're very good at not dying." She shot out the lights and disappeared into the ship's ventilation system, leaving Brutus alone with his dead guards and his growing fear. Back on the station, Corporal Jae-sung was checking perimeter defenses when the alarm came in. Lieutenant Eun-ji had been captured. Her tracking device showed she was on the Vorthak command ship. Jae-sung was a big man with gentle eyes and a quick smile. He liked to read poetry and play chess in his spare time. But when he heard that Yun-ji was in danger, something changed in his expression. "Sir," he said to Commander Hyun-woo over the radio, "request permission to retrieve Lieutenant Yun-ji." "Negative, Corporal," came the reply. "The command ship is too heavily defended. We'll find another way." Jae-sung looked at the massive Vorthak vessel through the station's viewports. It was surrounded by smaller ships and bristling with weapons. Any attack would be suicide. He went anyway. What happened next would become legend among both humans and aliens. Jae-sung took a small maintenance pod and flew it directly at the command ship. When the Vorthak shot it down, he used the explosion as cover to board their vessel. The Vorthak found him in their corridors an hour later. He was no longer the gentleman who read poetry. He had become something that made the savage aliens step back in fear. Jae-sung moved through the ship like a force of nature. His rifle fired constantly, never missing its target. When he ran out of ammunition, he used Vorthak weapons. When those broke, he used his hands. The sight of a single human cutting through dozens of elite warriors sent panic through the Vorthak crew. They had thought humans were tough, but this was beyond tough. This was pure, focused violence from a being who would not stop until he found his friend. Admiral Taemin watched the battle through intercepted Vorthak communications. The aliens were screaming in their own language, but the universal translators made their terror clear. "One human," Taemin whispered to himself. "One human is destroying an entire ship." Admiral Veltar stood beside him, equally amazed. "Sir, we need to contact Earth Command again. We need to know more about human military doctrine. When the communication came through, Earth Command sounded confused. Human military doctrine? Admiral, you have our peacekeepers there. They don't have any military doctrine except to protect civilians and avoid unnecessary violence. Then what do you call what Corporal J. Sung is doing? There was a pause. Oh, that. We call that getting upset. Humans don't like it when their friends are hurt. Jae Sung and Yoonji trained together. They're probably close. Admiral Tae-min felt his crystal body start to crack with stress. You mean this level of violence is normal when humans are emotional? Well, we try to teach our people to control their emotions, Earth Command replied. But sometimes feelings get the better of them. Don't worry, though. Once he finds his friend, he'll calm down. The communication ended just as Yoonji's signal appeared on the station's scanners. She was flying a stolen Vorthak fighter back to the station. Behind her, the command ship was burning and drifting dead in space. When the two humans landed, Jae Sung was back to his normal, gentle self. He helped Yoonji out of the fighter and asked if she was hurt. I'm fine, she said with a smile. Thanks. For the rescue? No problem, he replied. Sorry about the mess on their ship. Admiral Tae-min watched this casual conversation between two beings who had just destroyed a capital ship by themselves. They were talking like they had just helped each other with homework. For the first time, he began to understand what humans really were. They were not just tough or strong. They were predators who could become more dangerous when someone they cared about was threatened, and there were billions of them on a world called Earth. The thought made Admiral Tae-min's crystal body shiver with a fear he had never known before. Fear spread through the Vorthak Empire like a disease. For the first time in their history, Vorthak warriors were afraid to fight. Stories traveled from ship to ship about the small beings who could not be killed, who moved like ghosts, and who fought with the fury of demons. In the lower decks of the surviving Vorthak ships, soldiers whispered about the humans in their own language. They called them ghost warriors and death bringers. Some refused to go on missions where humans might be present. War Chief Brutus sat in his damaged command center, staring at reports he could not believe. In 3 days, his invasion force had been reduced by half. Not by superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but by 200 beings from a world no one had ever heard of. Sir, his lieutenant said carefully, perhaps we should withdraw, regroup and study these humans before attacking again. Brutus snarled and struck the smaller alien across the face. The Vorthak Empire does not retreat. We are the strongest warriors in the galaxy. But even as he said it, Brutus felt doubt creeping into his mind. He had seen the recordings from his ship. He had watched a single human female break free from restraints that should have held her, kill 3 of his best warriors, and escape through ventilation shafts too small for any proper warrior to fit through. Captain So Young was planning the next phase of human operations when she noticed something strange on the sensor screens. The Vorthak ships were spreading out, putting more distance between themselves and the station. They're afraid, she said with surprise. They're actually afraid of us. Commander Hyunwoo studied the tactical display. The Vorthak were still a powerful force, but their formation had changed. Instead of aggressive attack patterns, they were using defensive positions. Fear can be a weapon, Hyunwoo said thoughtfully. Let's see how we can use it. He opened a communication channel to the Vorthak fleet. When Brutus's image appeared on the screen, Hyunwoo could see the uncertainty in the alien's eyes. War Chief Brutus, Hyunwoo said politely. I am Commander Hyunwoo of Earth. I think we should talk. Brutus tried to look fierce, but his voice betrayed his nervousness. What do you want, human? I want you to leave, Hyunwoo replied simply. Take your ships and go. No one else has to die. Brutus laughed, but it sounded forced. You think 200 primitives can defeat the Vorthak Empire? You are brave but foolish. Hyunwoo smiled, and something in that smile made Brutus step back from his screen. War Chief, you've been fighting us for 3 days. How has that worked out for you? The alien commander had no answer for that. Let me tell you something about humans, Hyunwoo continued. We don't like bullies. We especially don't like bullies who hurt innocent people. You came here to capture peaceful beings and keep them as trophies. That makes us angry. Angry? Brutus scoffed. What can your anger do against our ships and weapons? In response, Hyunwoo activated a recording from the security cameras. It showed Corporal Jae-sung's assault on the command ship. Brutus watched. His elite warriors fall one by one to a single human who seemed to feel no pain and show no mercy. That was one human having a bad day, Hyunwoo said quietly. I have 200 humans here, and you just made all of them angry. Are you sure you want to see what we can do when we really try? For the first time in his career, Brutus felt something that no Vorthak was supposed to feel. He felt the desire to run away from a fight, but pride and tradition held him back. The Vorthak Empire had never surrendered to anyone. If he retreated now, he would be disgraced forever. The Vorthak do not fear death, he declared. Good, Hyunwoo replied, because we're very good at providing it. The communication ended, but the psychological damage was done. Brutus had seen the calm certainty in the human's eyes. There was no boasting, no anger, just the quiet confidence of a predator discussing its prey. On the station, the humans were preparing for what they assumed would be the final battle, but they were doing it in their own unique way. Lieutenant Ji-ho was cleaning his rifle while humming a song from home. Sergeant Han-Nul was checking her equipment and making jokes with the other soldiers. Private Woo Jin was reading a book about Earth history between weapons inspections. Admiral Taemin watched them with fascination and growing dread. These beings were about to go into a fight that could kill them all, and they seemed completely relaxed about it. How can they be so calm? He asked Dr. Kyung-mi. The human doctor looked up from her medical supplies. This is normal for us, she said. Humans have been fighting impossible odds for thousands of years. We've learned that worrying about death doesn't help anyone. But surely you must feel some fear. Dr. Kyung-mi thought about it for a moment. Fear is useful when it helps. You survive. But these people have already decided that protecting innocent beings is more important than their own safety. Once a human makes that decision, fear becomes irrelevant. She paused in her work to look at the Kythera Admiral. You know, Admiral, on Earth we have stories about warriors who would rather die than let evil triumph. We call them heroes. But to us they're just people doing what needs to be done. Admiral Veltar had been listening to the conversation. Doctor, what happens if the Vorthak bring more ships? What if they call for reinforcements? Dr. Kyung-mi smiled, and for a moment Veltar saw the same predatory expression he had noticed in the other humans. Then we'll fight more ships, she said simply. That's what humans do. We keep fighting until we win or until there's no one left to fight. The casual way she said it made Veltar's crystal blood freeze. This gentle healer, who spent her time saving lives, was talking about endless war as if it was as natural as breathing. In the Vorthak fleet, similar conversations were happening with very different tones. Warriors who had conquered worlds were now discussing retreat. Officers who had never known defeat were considering surrender. "These humans," one warrior said to his companion, "they fight like the old gods from our legends, the ones who destroyed armies and burned worlds." "But they are so small," the other replied. "How can such tiny beings be so dangerous?" "Maybe size doesn't matter. Maybe what matters is what lives inside them." War Chief Brutus heard these whispered conversations and felt his authority slipping away. His warriors were losing faith in their own strength. If this continued, the mighty Vorthak Empire would become a laughingstock throughout the galaxy. He made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Instead of retreating, he would prove that humans could be defeated. He would challenge their leader to single combat. If he won, the humans would have to surrender. If he lost, well, at least he would die with honor instead of living with shame. He did not realize that he was about to learn the most important lesson in the galaxy. Humans did not become the dominant species on their world by being reasonable. Captain So Young stood in the station's main docking bay, studying the tactical displays on her tablet. The human forces had secured most of the station, but the Vorthak fleet was still out there. She knew they needed to take the fight to the enemy before more ships arrived. "Sir," she said to Commander Hyun-woo over the communication system, "I recommend we attack their remaining ships directly. If we wait, they might call for reinforcements." Hyun-woo's voice came back calm and thoughtful. "What do you have in mind, Captain?" "Boarding actions," So Young replied. "Hit their ships fast and hard. Take out their command structure before they can coordinate a response." Admiral Taemin, who was listening to the conversation, felt his crystal body grow cold. "Captain So Young, boarding enemy ships is suicide. Their vessels are designed to kill intruders. The temperature, atmosphere, and gravity will kill you before you even find the enemy." So Young looked at the Kythera admiral with confusion. "Sir, we've reviewed the environmental data from captured Vorthak equipment. Their ships operate at about 70 degrees Celsius with a carbon dioxide atmosphere and gravity about twice Earth normal." "Exactly," Taemin said. "Those conditions would kill any civilized being in minutes." "Maybe," So Young agreed. "But humans aren't exactly civilized by galactic standards. 70 degrees is hot, but we can handle it for a while. The gravity is heavy, but not impossible. And carbon dioxide? Well, it's not great, but our breathing equipment can handle it." Admiral Veltar joined the conversation. "Captain, even if you survive the environment, their ships have automated defenses. Laser grids, poison gas, crushing walls designed to kill intruders." Private Wu Jin, who had been checking his equipment nearby, looked up with interest. "Sounds like a fun challenge," he said with a grin. "Kind of like the obstacle courses we used to run back home." The coalition officers stared at him in shock. He was talking about deadly ship defenses as if they were entertainment. Sergeant Hanul joined the group, carrying her rifle and wearing light armor. "When do we start?" she asked So Young. "I'm getting bored just defending the station, Lieutenant." Ji-ho appeared from another corridor. "My team is ready for boarding action," he reported. "We've studied the ship layouts from the captured data. Should be straightforward." Admiral Taemin watched these humans casually discuss attacking capital ships as if it was a normal work assignment. On any other day, he would have thought they were insane. After 3 days of watching them fight, he was beginning to think they might actually succeed. "How many ships are you planning to attack?" he asked weakly. "All of them," Commander Hyun-woo said, entering the docking bay. "If we're going to do this, we might as well do it right." So, Young pulled up the tactical display showing the Vorthak fleet. 12 ships remained, including several heavy cruisers and the damaged command vessel. "We'll split into teams," Hyun-woo explained. "Each team takes a ship. Fast entry, secure the bridge, disable weapons and engines. Once we control their fleet, we can negotiate from a position of strength." Commander Minho studied the ship positions. "The heavy cruisers will be the most dangerous. Their defenses are designed to stop entire armies." "Then we don't fight like an army," Hyun-woo replied. "We fight like humans, fast, unpredictable, and too stubborn to quit." Within an hour, the human teams were ready. They used small, fast ships that could avoid the Vorthak's heavy weapons. Each team had only 10 to 15 people, far too few by normal military standards to capture a capital ship. But normal military standards did not account for beings who had evolved on a world that actively tried to kill them every day. The first ship Hanul's team attacked was a heavy cruiser with a crew of over 1,000 Vorthak warriors. The automated defenses activated as soon as the humans entered the ship. Laser grids swept through the corridors. Poison gas flooded the ventilation system, and crushing walls tried to trap the intruders. Hanul led her team through it all like she was taking a walk in the park. When laser grids blocked their path, they found alternate routes. When poison gas filled the air, they used breathing masks and kept moving. When walls tried to crush them, they moved too fast to be caught. "This is actually pretty clever," Hanul said, as she avoided another laser trap. "Whoever designed these defenses understood how to stop most species." "Too bad we're not most species," replied one of her team members, ducking under a mechanical arm that tried to grab him. On another ship, Jiho's team was discovering that Vorthak defensive systems had a fatal weakness. They were designed to stop large, slow, heavily armored beings. Humans were small, fast, and agile. They could fit through gaps and move in ways the defenses never expected. "It's like they built these traps for elephants," Jiho observed as he slid under an energy barrier. "We're more like mice." The Vorthak crews watched their own security systems fail to stop the human intruders. Warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves trapped in their own ships by beings who moved like ghosts and fought like demons. On the command ship, War Chief Brutus received reports that made no sense. Human teams were systematically capturing his fleet. Ships that should have been able to hold off entire armies were falling to handfuls of primitives with simple weapons. "How are they doing this?" he roared at his surviving officers. "How are these tiny beings defeating our greatest weapons?" One of his lieutenants, a veteran of 50 battles, spoke carefully. "Sir, I think we misunderstood what humans are. We thought they were weak because they look soft and use primitive technology. But I think they don't need advanced technology because they are the technology." "What do you mean?" "Look at the reports, sir. They move faster than our sensors can track. They survive in environments that would kill us. They fight with a coordination. That suggests they share a group mind, and they never, ever give up." Brutus studied the tactical displays showing his ships being systematically captured. Each human team was smaller than a single squad of his warriors. Yet they were winning. "Sir," another officer said quietly, "I think these humans might not be a normal species. Their world, what if it's not just a tough place to live? What if it's a place that creates monsters?" The word monsters hung in the air like a curse. Brutus had called other species monsters before. He had never imagined that someone might call his own people that. But looking at what humans could do, he was beginning to understand how other species saw the Vorthak. On the station, Admiral Taman watched the battle through intercepted communications. One by one, the Vorthak ships were going dark as human. Teams captured them. It was the most incredible military operation he had ever witnessed. "Admiral," Veltar said quietly, "we need to reconsider our classification of Earth." "What do you mean?" "We classified it as a frontier world with primitive inhabitants. But look at what those inhabitants can do. Sir, I think Earth might be what the old databases call a deathworld. A planet so dangerous that it creates beings who are essentially living weapons." Taemin felt his crystal structure crack under stress. Deathworlds were theoretical. No one believed that sentient life could actually evolve on such places. "If Earth is a death world," Taemin whispered, "then what does that make humans?" The answer came to him with horrible clarity. Humans were not refugees from a death world. They were the apex predators that had conquered it, and now they were in space, helping other species and making friends, as long as those species were nice to them. Admiral Taemin decided that the Galaxy Coalition would always be nice to humans. War Chief Brutus stood alone on the bridge of his flagship, watching as his empire crumbled around him. 11 of his 12 ships had been captured by human boarding parties. His warriors, the strongest in the galaxy, had surrendered rather than face beings who seemed impossible to kill. The communications panel crackled to life. Commander Hyunwoo's calm voice filled the bridge. "War Chief Brutus, this is Commander Hyunwoo. Your fleet has been neutralized. Your warriors are unharmed and will be treated according to galactic law. This war is over." Brutus stared at the screen, his pride and honor warring with the reality of his situation. Everything he had believed about Vorthak's superiority had been proven wrong by these small, soft-looking beings from an unknown world. "It is not over," Brutus growled. "I challenge you to personal combat. Single battle between leaders. If I win, my people go free. If you win, we surrender completely." There was a pause before Hyunwoo responded. "War Chief, there's no need for more violence. Your people are already free to leave. Just take your ships and go." "No," Brutus roared. "The Vorthak Empire does not slink away in defeat. If we must fall, we will fall with honor." Another pause. Then, "Very well. But the combat will be held on the station, under neutral observation. No weapons except what we can carry." 1 hour later, the station's main cargo bay had been cleared for the fight. Representatives from a dozen species watched as the two leaders faced each other. The contrast was striking. War Chief Brutus stood 3 meters tall, his gray skin thick as armor. Muscles bulged beneath his hide, and his claws could tear through metal. He carried a massive war hammer that most beings could not even lift. Commander Hyunwoo looked tiny beside him. He was less than 2 meters tall, his skin pale and soft. He carried a simple combat knife and wore basic armor. To anyone who had not seen humans fight, it looked like a hopeless mismatch. Admiral Taemin and the other coalition representatives watched nervously. They had seen what humans could do in battle, but this was different. This was one human against the strongest warrior in the Vorthak Empire. "Begin," announced Admiral Veltar. Brutus charged immediately, his warhammer whistling through the air. The blow would have crushed a starship hull. It hit nothing but empty space. Hyunwoo had moved like water, flowing around the attack with impossible grace. While Brutus was off balance from his missed swing, the human struck with his knife, cutting a thin line across the alien's thick hide. The cut was shallow, barely drawing blood. But it proved a point. Hyunwoo could have gone for a killing blow. Instead, he chose to wound. Brutus spun around, swinging his hammer in wide arcs. Each blow could have ended the fight instantly, but none of them connected. Hyun-woo moved like he could predict the future, always staying just out of reach. "Stand still and fight!" Brutus bellowed, frustration growing in his voice. "I am fighting," Hyun-woo replied calmly, ducking under another swing. "You're just not very good at it." The insult stung worse than any wound. Brutus had never been mocked in combat before. He abandoned strategy and threw himself at the human with pure rage. It was exactly what Hyun-woo had been waiting for. As Brutus lunged forward, Hyun-woo stepped aside and let the alien's own momentum carry him past. The human's knife flickered, out like a snake's tongue, finding the gaps in Brutus's natural armor. One cut to the back of the knee, another to the wrist holding the hammer. Brutus stumbled and dropped his weapon. He was not seriously injured, but he was bleeding from a dozen small wounds. Each cut was precise, designed to limit his movement without causing permanent damage. "How?" Brutus gasped, turning to face his opponent. "How are you so fast?" Hyun-woo circled the larger being like a wolf stalking prey. "On my world, War Chief, the strongest animals are not always the ones that survive. Sometimes the smart ones live longer than the strong ones." Brutus charged again, using his claws this time. But he was slower now, weakened by blood loss and confusion. Hyun-woo continued his deadly dance, staying just out of reach while adding more precise cuts. "My people conquered the galaxy through strength," Brutus said, breathing hard. "What did your people conquer?" "Everything," Hyun-woo replied simply. "Every environment, every predator, every disease and disaster our world could throw at us. We didn't conquer through strength alone. We conquered through adaptation, cooperation, and the refusal to give up." Admiral Tae-min watched the fight with growing understanding. This was not just a battle between two warriors. It was a demonstration of two completely different approaches to survival. The Vorthak had survived by being stronger than everything else, but humans had survived by being smarter, faster, and more adaptable than everything else. On a world that tried to kill them constantly, humans had learned that overwhelming force was less useful than precision and persistence. Brutus made one final desperate attack, throwing his entire body at the human in a tackle that should have crushed him. Instead, Hyun-woo grabbed the alien's arm and used his own momentum against him, throwing the massive warrior to the ground with a move that looked impossible. Brutus lay on his back, staring up at the ceiling. He was cut, bruised, and exhausted. His opponent stood over him, not even breathing hard. "Do you yield?" Hyun-woo asked. For a long moment, Brutus said nothing. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I yield. The Vorthak Empire surrenders to the humans." The cargo bay erupted in noise as representatives from various species began talking at once. The mighty Vorthak Empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, had been defeated by a single ship of humans. Hyun-woo helped Brutus to his feet. "War Chief, this doesn't have to be the end of your people. The galaxy is big enough for everyone. Maybe it's time for the Vorthak to try cooperation instead of conquest." Brutus looked at the human with something like respect. "You could have killed me easily. Why didn't you?" "Because killing you wouldn't solve anything," Hyun-woo replied. "Humans prefer to make friends rather than enemies. We'll fight when we have to, but we'd rather talk." Dr. Kyung-mi approached to treat Brutus's wounds. As she worked, she chatted pleasantly about medicine and healing. The war chief found himself fascinated by this small being who could discuss the best ways to save lives with the same calm that her commander had shown while ending a battle. "Your people," Brutus said slowly. "They are not what they appear to be." "Most people aren't," Dr. Kyungmi replied with a smile. "Humans just learn to be very good at surviving. It makes us seem scarier than we really are." Admiral Taemin began preparing his report to Coalition Command. He would have to explain how 200 peaceful civilians had defeated the most feared military force in the galaxy. He would have to recommend reclassifying Earth from a frontier world to something much more significant. Most importantly, he would have to advise that any future requests for human assistance be accompanied by warnings, not warnings about human capabilities, those were no longer in doubt. Warnings about what humans would do to anyone who threatened innocent people. As the Vorthak fleet prepared to leave, War Chief Brutus sent one final message to Commander Hyun-woo. "Human," he said, "I must ask, the beings you brought here, your report said they were civilians, administrative personnel. If these are your weakest people, what are your warriors like?" Hyun-woo's response would be recorded in galactic databases and studied by military strategists for generations to come. "War Chief," he said with a slight smile, "every human is a warrior when they need to be. That's what our world taught us. But you don't want to meet our actual soldiers. They're the ones we call when being polite doesn't work." The communication ended, leaving Brutus to contemplate a terrifying thought. If the humans he had fought were the gentle ones, what were the dangerous ones? As the human ship Indomitable prepared to return to Cygnus 7th, Admiral Taemin made one final entry in his log. Personal note: "Today, I learned that the galaxy contains beings far more dangerous than the Vorthak Empire ever was. Fortunately, they seem to be on our side. Recommend immediate upgrade of human status to protected predator species and suggest that all Coalition members be very, very nice to them." The quiet humans from Earth packed their simple equipment and prepared to go home, treating the entire incident as a minor training exercise. They had no idea that they had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. But they had learned something important, too. The galaxy was full of bullies who picked on peaceful species. And humans, as it turned out, really didn't like bullies. It was going to be a very interesting future for everyone involved.